Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Your Honor, opposing counsel, my name is Robert Baker, and this is my co-counsel, Mr. Andrew Harris. And you have just heard the case of the State of New Jersey versus Pat Hopper. My co-counsel stated on his opening statement that Mr. Hopper is cloaked with the presumption of innocence. He remains under that shroud until or unless you come from your final deliberation with finding him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the 4 charges that have been pressed against him by the state: trespassing, burglary, theft, and biased theft. I do find it necessary to point out, ladies and gentlemen, by technicality, you cannot find him guilty of trespassing. They were trying to claim, though stipulated, it's been trespassing as entering a residence without right of permission. By obtaining the lockbox code from Ms. Jackie Whistler, he was given permission to enter that residence and put as property on the housing market. With burglary, as stated on page 39 of the mock trial book, you would have to enter a restricted property or any residence thereof unless the residence was open to the public. Having said that it was a house put on the open market for possible prospective homeowners to view at their pleasure, I would like to say that his was on the market, and therefore he couldn't have entered that permission. Ladies and gentlemen, the state wants you to believe that Pat Hopper is a man filled to the brim of anti-Devonian sentiment and is more than capable of breaking into the Wilson residence, stealing their ring, watch, Devonian star, in the hopes of assisting Ms. Jackie Whistler to send the Devonians packing. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not what this case is. You heard the testimony of Ms. Jamie Renner. Hopper's a very good man, both on and off the court. He's great at basketball. He's amazing at it. In fact, he's so good that he's been offered a scholarship for such talent and devotion to the sport. When he entered the residence, he went simply to return a math test, nothing more. The testimony of Chris Chenko, which you also heard, no items were reported stolen on the day of the incident. Miss Wilson had days to report if anything was stolen, but didn't. Then, weeks later, files a more than $10,000 claim to the insurance company. Miss Wilson was at the house when Hopper was in the library. She saw it with her own eyes. And being that that was a place where her precious Devonian star, the symbol of her ethnicity and place of origin, was held proudly, why didn't she go in there immediately after he left to check that it was still hanging? I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that is a reasonable doubt. Detective Sergeant Adams, right? Even with all the expert data he's analyzed about possible discussions between Hopper and Miss Whistler, he has no idea what the content of the discussions were, or even if they had a discussion at all. For all he knows, and you heard it from his own mouth, the entire discussion could have gone to voicemail, and his phone log would have still picked it up as a conversation. And not only that, but the more complaints he files, the more funding his agency receives. And even after all those doubts, the state's still willing to call him his expert. Can we really seal away Hopper's fate based on that, some flawed evidence? Mr. Hopper is a good man. He has his entire life ahead of him. But on the other hand, Miss Jackie Whistler had a choice. She could have chosen to be a law-abiding citizen, or she could have chosen to be a criminal. She chose to be a criminal. She chose to take the path of darkness. And now the state wants you to feel sorry for her. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard her background. She is a woman of anti-Devonian sentiment. She has the motive and intent, not Mr. Hopper, to drive the Devonians out of America. It's the title of her Facebook blog. She posted a Facebook blog to rally anti-Devonian sentiment around the community. You heard what she did. She shot Mr. Wilson, nearly killing him. And yet the state wants you to believe that she would not lie on the stand. Let me remind you, the whole reason that she's here today is because she made a plea bargain with the state, reducing her sentence from murder 1 to attempted murder. So in essence, the state made a deal with the devil. The reason she's here is just to throw Mr. Hopper, the innocent scholarly defendant, right under the bus and promote her own self-interest. And consider this. The lockbox code that Mr. Hopper used to get into the Wilson residence was posted on the World Wide Web for anyone and everyone to see. Literally anybody could have taken it, could have used it into the Wilson residence. During their testimony, ladies and gentlemen, did the state ever tell you that Jackie Whistler didn't steal anything? Miss Wilson was shaken up for days after the immediate incident. And she could have just as easily as anybody else who could have looked online to see the Facebook page, broken into the house, taken the watch, taken the ring, taken the precious Devonian star for herself and her own anti-Devonian motives. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that that too is a reasonable doubt. You cannot find Mr. Homper guilty of a reasonable doubt because I have stated reasonable doubts exist. Remember, for you to believe that Mr. Homper is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, you have to believe the credibility of the witnesses the state put on the stand. The state said in their opening that all the witnesses are credible, but I just pointed out reasonable doubts that exist. During your final deliberation, take the following in mind. Falsus in unum, falsus in omnibus. It's an old Latin phrase that, when translated to English, simply means false in one, false in all. What that means is that you are permitted to believe that if the witnesses lie about one thing, are lying about other things too. When I questioned Sergeant Alex Wright, it was only when I crossed him that he brought out the flaws in his expert testimony and analyses. Those are just a couple things he was fully retaining until I questioned him. What else are they hiding from you? So, ladies and gentlemen, in summation, I ask, no, I implore that during your deliberation you find Mr. Homper, this scholarly defendant, not guilty. I'd like to end my statement today with a thank you to each and every one of you for assisting in the proper administration of justice, as well as asserting your duties as U.S. citizens.